in the end zone. Spectacular grab of that fantastic throw. The spinning footwork means that the sinking feeling on the Buccaneers bench was warranted, because now they've got to get a stop or they're going to need to play into overtime in all likelihood. What do they draw up? Dion Lewis, who had caught a touchdown earlier, is open, but Jones hesitates just slightly. Antoine Winfield gets there. It looks like in perfect time, but then a very late flag comes in. The officials come over, huddle up, talk about it. Winfield turning his head back just as he arrives. You can see it perfectly there as the ball's arriving. Steve?
I love how we get to look at it in slow motion.
Understood.
You know?
Well, there was a flag down, man. That's what makes it tough. And they picked it up. And Tom Brady's thoughts on that play.
It was a great play. You know, I think he sensed the ball was coming and put his arm out. Ball hit him in the arm. And it was a game-saving play for us. You know, they converted whatever, 4th and 16, 4th and 17, and ultimately made a great throw and catch there to score. And then they had to make the 2-point conversion, and Antoine made a great play. So it was a great play, great job, you know, getting an onside kick and sealing the deal.
Next, we'll go to Greg Allman.
Tom, obviously you guys were able to play better in the second half. Is there something you point to for why the offense struggled in the first half, why you had 6 points at the break?
We didn't play anywhere near the way that we were capable of playing, and just execution. That's all it comes down to, is we need to execute a lot better. I had guys open that I missed, and I got to hit those guys that are open.
Do our research on a not-so-pretty victory for the Buccaneers. Wasn't a great night for Brady. Did have some success in play action, 10 of 11 on play action for 110 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. When the game is on the line, Brady went to Mike Evans, as he's done all season. Evans explaining to Lisa Salters, when he get one-on-one down there, he loves to look for me. Brady a perfect 6 for 6 with 6 touchdowns when targeting Evans in the end zone this season. And with a win on Monday night, the Buccaneers are 6-2 atop the NFC South, which matches Tampa Bay's best start through 8 games in the history of the franchise. Last time they were 6-2, 2002. The year that they won the only Super Bowl, I should say, in the history of the franchise. Ryan Clark joins us now. And Ryan, had this ended differently, obviously the conversation would have taken a very different tack. But given the fact that the Buccaneers win, I think that we can look forward rather than back. And where you see this team fitting in the NFC as they get ready to entertain New Orleans in the second half of the season.
You know, Scott, coming into this week after the last 2 weeks of blowing the Green Bay Packers out and the Las Vegas Raiders, I thought this team sat atop the NFC. But right now, when you look at them, kind of this up and down roller coaster that they ride, they have to be up there with the New Orleans Saints and with the Seattle Seahawks. And those teams probably battling it out to see who will represent the NFC in the Super Bowl is the way I see this thing going. But this team is continuing to get better. It seems like they're continuing to ascend. And it seemed like they were looking over the New York Giants a little bit forward to a matchup against the New Orleans Saints next week. That game is going to tell us a lot about this team. How far have they progressed? How much has that chemistry grown? And are they truly ready to say that they are the NFL or the NFC's elite?
You know what this is about. It's a bit of human nature, and give the Giants credit. There's 2 teams on the field getting paid, and the Giants made it tough on Brady in the second half. And look, they're a 2-point conversion and a flag away from potentially playing into overtime in this one. All right, as we look ahead, this team gets a guy, Antonio Brown, a guy you know well, and a guy you've not been shy about criticizing for this, that, or the other thing. But I believe your opinion on what he represented to this Buccaneer team would ultimately be. Why has your opinion changed about who he is going to be on that team?
You know, at first, Scott, I thought it was a luxury. And I said, you know, having Antonio Brown, this is the piece they could just plug in, use him when they want to. And then I started to kind of look at Chris Godwin's role and how explosive this team is when Chris Godwin plays, because you have to roll coverage to Mike Evans. You have to make sure you cover the tight ends. And then he gets some one-on-one matchups, or even when Scotty Miller is healthy. Antonio Brown could be that guy, or Antonio Brown is going to make you make a choice as a defense of whether to double Mike Evans or him. So that means one of these guys, one of these all-time talents, one of these Pro Bowl, all-pro caliber wide receivers is going to get one-on-one matchups. And when they have that extra guy, they beat people by 18. They beat people by 28. They beat people by 25. That's the type of team this becomes once you get that one extra piece. And Chris Godwin is really good. Don't get me wrong. But Antonio Brown was the best wide receiver we had ever seen for 6 years, statistically. And he's coming back to play. And the one word I heard to describe him when he's been seen in Tampa is phenomenal. And if Antonio Brown is phenomenal, if Antonio Brown is close to what he used to be, this team is going to be extremely dangerous offensively.
Man, that's a scary, scary thought because obviously they've been scary without him to this point. And you add to your point, Ryan, a guy who, when he's right, has a ceiling that very few wide receivers of his time or any time really have played to. So that's the million-dollar question. How can he keep his mind right and play to his level on the field? Could he change how you view them ultimately if he's phenomenal, or do they have a notch above anyone else?
They are different. They are different if they change, if he changes SVP. I mean, think about it. He's been extremely quiet off of the field lately. We haven't heard Antonio Brown's name other than what team he would sign with after the eight week of the season. And so now we see him. And so when you look at Antonio Brown, if he's different, if he truly understands his back is against the wall, he can help this team win a Super Bowl.
Ryan Clark, as always, part of our Monday Night Football coverage. Appreciate you. We'll talk again next week, sir. Be well.
Thank you, my man. Have a good one.
All right, we promised you Joe Judge. He saw things a little bit different than Bruce Arians did, not surprisingly. Here's what he had to say about the way the game ended.
Nate made the right call when he threw the flag. So I'm not sure why it got picked up. We had a pretty good view. I know they can't use the Jumbotrons for replay. We had a pretty clear view of that as well. But I thought Nate made the right call the first time. I thought, normally your first instinct is the right one. So that's all I'm going to say about the officiating, guys. I know it's going to be a lot of follow-up questions to it. I'm just going to be very clear and concise with that right there. I thought our guys played hard. We got to put ourselves in position that we can have success and not bring a third party into the factor. It's tough enough to beat the Bucs. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Daniel Jones' performance came down to release time. 16-24 with a touchdown when getting rid of the ball in less than 2.5 seconds. You could see clearly the game plan was to do that given the type of defense he was up against. But as we saw on the 2 interceptions and the 2-point conversion, if he held onto the ball just even fractionally longer than that 2-second window, that's where the struggles set in. Busy day of news, none of it any good for the reigning NFC champion San Francisco 49ers. High wire act of the reigning champions becoming increasingly wobbly as they lost defensive cogs earlier this year, a ton of running backs, and now Jimmy Garoppolo back on the bench for the second time this year with an ankle injury. He returned from the first only to be benched in a home loss to Miami. He's lost for 6 weeks or more. Potentially surgery could be part of that as well. This was no good. George Kittle made a spectacular grab against Seattle, but broke a bone in his foot making that grab. This is the second time he'll be out and miss games this season. This loss expected to be 8 weeks or more, which for all intents and purposes ends his season. Quan Alexander gone as well, not injured, traded to the New Orleans Saints on Monday for Kiko Alonso at a 5th. Alexander came over as a free agent from Tampa Bay prior to last season. He battled injuries last season and this as well, and this is sobering inventory to take as a quick turnaround for the game against Green Bay. And when the Niners are on the field, they could be without 13 of their 22 starters from Super Bowl 54, where they led by 10 in the fourth quarter. 5 of those players are no longer with San Francisco, with 2 retirements and 3 more on new teams. 5 others, including Jimmy G and Kittle, are confirmed out, while 3 more have uncertain statuses for the Packers game. Now, we're not even a year removed from the Super Bowl run, where the Niners were perhaps a stop away from winning it, but it feels like forever ago, and November's just begun. They're in last place in the impossibly difficult NFC West, and they're banged up in the wrong division for it to not to matter. And it just speaks to how many factors are